In the 1970s, educators began to question if they were going about meeting the goal in the right way. Some observed that students could produce sentences accurately in a lesson, but could not use them appropriately when genuinely communicating outside of the classroom. Others noted that being able to communicate required more than mastering linguistic structure, due to the fact that language was fundamentally social. Within a social context, language users needed to perform certain functions, such as promising, inviting, and declining invitations. Students may know the rules of linguistic usage, but being able to use the language. In short, being able to communicate required more than linguistic competence. It required communicative competence, knowing when and how to say what to whom. Such observations contributed to a shift in the field in the late 1970s and early 1980s from a linguistic structure-centered approach to a communicative approach. Applying the theoretical perspective of the communicative approach, communicative language teaching, or CLT, aims broadly to make communicative competence the goal of language teaching. Good morning, class. Now I'm giving out a handout for each one of you. There is writing on both sides. On one side is a copy of a sports column from a recent newspaper. The reporter there is discussing the last World Cup competition. Please read it and underline the projections the reporter makes about the next World Cup. Now that you're done, please read what you have underlined and I'm going to write them on the board.
France is very likely to win the next World Cup. Spain can win if they play as well as they have lately. Germany probably won't be a contender next time. Argentina may have an outside chance.
Which of the predictions on the board does the reporter feel more certain about? And which are the predictions that he isn't really very sure of? This time, let's look at the first sentence. France is very likely to win the next World Cup. What is another way to express this same prediction?
France probably will win the next World Cup.
Yes. Any others?
France is almost certain to win the World Cup.
Very good. What about the next sentence? Spain can win if they play as well as they have lately.
It is possible that Spain will win the World Cup.
Very good. Another, please.
There is a possibility that Spain will win the World Cup.
Well done, class. So far, your paraphrases convey the same degree of certainty as the reporter's original prediction. Next, please turn to the other side of the handout. On it are all the sentences of the article that you have been working on. The sentences, however, are out of order. So what you're going to do is unscramble the sentences and put them in the proper order by numbering them. Now that you're done, compare what you did with the original on the other side of the handout. Do you agree with the reporter's predictions? This time, get a partner and together write your own prediction about who will be the next World Cup champion. For the next activity, I'm going to read a number of predictions. By 2030, solar energy will replace the world's reliance on fossil fuels. By 2050, people will be living on the moon. Students, make statements about how probable you think the predictions are and why you believe so. Also, please include how you feel about the prediction. For the final activity of the class, we will do a role play. Please get into groups of 4 and imagine that you are all employees of the same company. One of you is the boss, however. So you are meeting to discuss what will possibly occur as a result of the company merging with another company. Before you begin, discuss some possibilities together. You can talk about topics such as whether or not some of the people in the company will lose their jobs, whether or not they will have to move, whether or not certain policies will change, whether or not they will earn more money. And remember that one of you in each group is the boss. So you should think about this relationship, if, for example, she makes a prediction that you don't agree with. So let's think about what language forms are appropriate in dealing with the boss. For example, what if you know that your boss doesn't think the vacation policy will change, but you think it will? How will you state your prediction?
Teacher, I probably will say, I think the vacation policy might change. I will not say the vacation policy will change. I will say might, because I'm talking to my boss and might is more polite.
Very good. What if, however, it is your colleague with whom you disagree and you are certain that you are right? How will you express your prediction then?
I will use words that make me sound sure, like will, and I know, and I am sure. Like, I know that the vacation policy will change. I am sure that the vacation policy will change, and the vacation policy will change. It's because I'm talking to my colleague and we are equals.
Very excellent participation today, class. Now I'm going to give you homework. So find out what you can about two political candidates running against each other in the upcoming election. So write your prediction of who you think will win the election and why you think so. You're going to read your answers to your classmates at the start of the next class. Goodbye. So that class was conducted for immigrants to Canada, and those 20 people have lived in Canada for 2 years already and are at a high intermediate level. Let's review the observations made and the underlying principles. First observation. The teacher distributes a handout that has a copy of a sports column from a recent newspaper. The principle in action here is, whenever possible, authentic language, as in language as it is used in a real context, should be introduced. Second observation. The teacher tells the students to underline the reporter's predictions and to say which ones they think the reporter feels most certain of and which he feels least certain of. Principle. Being able to figure out the speaker's or writer's intentions is part of being communicatively competent. Observation number 3. The teacher gives the students the directions for the activity in the target language. The principle here is the target language is a vehicle for classroom communication and not just the object of study. Observation 4. The students try to state the reporter's predictions in different words. Principle. One function can have many different linguistic forms. Since the focus of the course is on real language use, a variety of linguistic forms are presented together. The emphasis is on the process of communication rather than just mastery of language forms. Fifth observation. The students unscramble the sentences of the newspaper article. Principle. Students should work with language at the discourse or supersentential or above the sentence level. They must learn about cohesion and coherence, those properties of language which bind the sentences together. Observation. The students are asked how they feel about the reporter's predictions. Principle. Students should be given an opportunity to express their ideas and opinions. Observation. The students do a role play. They are to imagine that they are all employees of the same company. Principle. The social context of the communicative event is essential in giving meaning to the utterances. Another observation. The teacher reminds the students that one of them is playing the role of the boss and that they should remember this when speaking to her. Principle. Learning to use language forms appropriately is an important part of communicative competence. Observation. The students suggest alternative forms they would use to state a projection to a colleague. Principle. In communicating, the speaker has a choice not only about what to say, but also how to say it. For their homework, the students are to find out about political candidates and to make a projection about which one will be successful in the forthcoming election. The principle here is students should be given opportunities to work on language as it is used in authentic communication. Let's review the principles. The answers to our 10 questions here will help us come to a better understanding of communicative language teaching.
What are the goals of teachers who use communicative language teaching or CLT?
The goal is to enable students to communicate in the target language. To do this, students need knowledge of the linguistic forms, meanings, and functions. They need to know that many different forms can be used to perform a function, and also that a single form can often serve a variety of functions. They must be able to choose from among these the most appropriate form, given the social context and the roles of the interlocutors. They must also be able to manage the process of negotiating meaning with their interlocutors. Communication is a process. Knowledge of the forms of language is insufficient.
What is the role of the teacher? What is the role of the students?
The teacher facilitates communication in the classroom. In this role, one of his major responsibilities is to establish situations likely to promote communication. During the activities, he acts as an advisor, answering students' questions and monitoring their performance. He might make a note of their errors to be worked on at a later time during more accuracy-based activities. At other times, he might be a co-communicator, engaging in the communicative activity along with the students. Students are above all communicators. They are actively engaged in negotiating meaning, in trying to make themselves understood, even when their knowledge of the target language is incomplete. Also, since the teacher's role is less dominant than in a teacher-centered method, students are seen as more responsible for their own learning.
What are the characteristics of the teaching-learning process?
Most obvious characteristic of CLT is that almost everything that is done with a communicative intent. Students use the language a great deal through communicative activities such as games, role plays, and problem-solving tasks. Activities that are truly communicative, according to Morrow, have 3 features in common: information gap, choice, and feedback. In communication, the speaker has a choice of what she will say and how she will say it. If the exercise is tightly controlled so that the students can only say something in one way, the speaker has no choice and the exchange, therefore, is not communicative. In a chain drill, for example, if a student must reply to her neighbor's question in the same way as her neighbor replied to someone else's question, then she has no choice of form and content, and real communication does not occur. Another characteristic is the use of authentic materials, and the activities are often carried out by students in small groups. Small numbers of students interacting are favored in order to maximize the time allotted to each student for communicating.
How are the feelings of the students dealt with?
One of the basic assumptions of CLT is that by learning to communicate, students will be more motivated to study another language, since they will feel they are learning to do something useful. Also, teachers give students an opportunity to express their individuality by having them share their ideas and opinions on a regular basis. Finally, student security is enhanced by the many opportunities for cooperative interactions with their fellow students and the teacher.
How is the language viewed? How is culture viewed?
Language is for communication. Linguistic competence, or the knowledge of forms and their meanings, is only one part of communicative competence. Another aspect of communicative competence is knowledge of the functions that a language is used for. As we have seen in this lesson, a variety of forms can be used to accomplish a single function. Inversely, the same form of the language can be used for a variety of functions. Thus, the learner needs knowledge of forms and meanings and functions. However, to be communicatively competent, she must also use this knowledge and take into consideration the social situation in order to convey her intended meaning appropriately.
What areas of language are emphasized? What language skills are emphasized?
Language functions might be emphasized over forms. Typically, although not always, a functional syllabus is used, so a variety of forms are introduced for each function. Only the simpler forms would be presented at first, but as students get more proficient in the target language, the functions are reintroduced and more complex forms are learned. Students work with language at the discourse or suprasentential level. They learn about cohesion and coherence. Students work in all four skills from the beginning. Just as oral communication is seen to take place through negotiation between speaker and listener, so too is meaning thought to be derived from the written word through an interaction between the reader and the writer. So meaning does not therefore reside exclusively in the text, but rather arises through negotiation between the reader and writer.
What is the role of the student's native language?
Judicious use of the student's native language is permitted in CLT. However, whenever possible, the target language should be used not only during communicative activities, but also for explaining the activities to the students or in assigning homework. So the students learn from these classroom management exchanges too, and realize that the target language is a vehicle for communication and not just an object to be studied.
How is evaluation accomplished?
A teacher evaluates not only students' accuracy, but also their fluency. The student who has the most control of the structures and vocabulary is not always the best communicator. A teacher can evaluate a student's performance informally in his role as advisor or co-communicator. For more formal evaluation, a teacher is likely to use an integrative test, which has real communicative function. In order to assess students' writing skill, for instance, a teacher might ask them to write a letter to a friend.
How does the teacher respond to student errors?
Errors of form are tolerated during fluency-based activities and are seen as a natural outcome of the development of communication skills. Students can have limited linguistic knowledge and still be successful communicators. The teacher may note the errors during fluency activities and return to them later with an accuracy-based activity. That's it about communicative language teaching. I hope that this report has provided you with some ideas should you wish to try any of the techniques or materials associated with the topic. Thank you so much for listening. Have a nice day.